Boker Tov, good morning. Today is Friday, February 18th, Erev Shabbat, Parshat Ki Tisa. It's a very, very intense parashat. It involves, as you might be aware, the primary story, the earth-shattering story of the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, Moshe coming down, God being so angry, threatening to destroy them. Moshe comes and defends the Bnei Israel and convinces God, indeed, not to destroy them, to give another chance to accept their teshuvah, their repentance. And then Moshe asks for, because this has been a very intense process with God, he actually feels drawn closer to God and realizing that teshuvah can actually, even though he was representative teshuvah, that whole process can be one which brings you close to God. He asked God to show him all his glory. And God, there's a sort of back and forth about what that would mean. But God says, I'll put you in the cleft of the rock. And it'll happen when my glory will pass before you. I'll place you in the cleft of the rock. And I'll cover you with the palm of my hand until I have passed by. And then I will remove my my hand, and you'll see my back, but you won't see my front. There's a lot here to unpack and to try to make sense of. What does it mean to see God's back, not God's front? So there is seemingly this implication, right? I'm passing before you, as I've described, God says. And so I'm going to block you as I pass before you, and then I'll pull my hand. I don't know, sort of, if you imagine God very anthropomorphically kind of pulls his hand away, and then Moshe can open his eyes and just see the back of God. So what does that mean, the back of God? The Ramban here seems to focus in on a Kabbalistic teaching about the front and the male and the female side in the very creation itself. That God created us front and back. And so maybe the notion is that you'll see my Shekhinah, the feminine side of me, and not the front of me, the male side of me, which is beyond our scope to understand the Kabbalistic elements here for now. But maybe not, because it might reflect God's Shekhinah as manifest, the way God is manifest in the world. Hold that thought. The Gemara in Brachot contends that the way to interpret this verse is that God showed him God's kesher shel tefillin, the knot of God's tefillin. The Gemara has made the case that there's a parallel expression. We wear tefillin, affirming and declaring that God is our God. Shema is the centerpiece, right, of the tefillin. And God, it's very, very unusually, Gemara contends, God wears tefillin. Also, what's written in God's tefillin, Mikam Chai Yisrael Goyachad Ba'aretz, who is like Israel, this singular nation. So it's really very interesting that we should suggest that we can see God's tefillin. It would then represent that God has said the nation which he was ready to write off just a few minutes or days earlier, that God's wearing the tefillin of once more affirming that there is none like Israel. So that's a very beautiful thing. But why the kesher shel tefillin? The kesher. If you just I should have brought my tefillin in to show you. But if you have if you imagine a pair of tefillin, you have the box on top of your head, and you have the straps that come out in front, and the kesher is what sort of takes the strap and ties it and pulls it forward. And indeed, that might be part of a discussion about the way God is manifest in this world. When Moshe says, this is an interpretation I heard years ago, and it really has always stayed with me. When Moshe says, I want to understand your ways in this world, God says, you're not going to be able to understand my ways in this world in a head-on way, face to face. It's just not going to be. You're not going to be able to see it as it's happening, or before it's happening, and to really comprehend it. What you might be able to do is to appreciate and understand God's presence manifest when you step back and look back. You look back at the events that have just unfolded, whether in the past short while or longer period of time. You suddenly can say, there God was. There God was. And the unusual thing that's pointed out about the Kesher tefillin, you see somebody wearing tefillin, and you see, okay, there's the box on the top of the tefillin, and you see the straps that sort of head backwards, and then you see the straps coming forward. So, like, how does that happen? How is it that these straps are here in front of me? The only way to know is to kind of have the retrospective view, to see it from behind. In this case, not merely as some has described, they turn the tapestry around. You can see how the weave presents this beautiful picture in front of you, which is another way that they look at it. But you look retrospectively and come to appreciate where God was in this world. Not always simple. And sometimes we say, I don't feel God's presence, because God sometimes says, my face is not going to be there. That's Hester Panim. God turns away completely. But many other experiences we are meant to appreciate. We can't necessarily see God in the moment, but we will understand and comprehend where God was, hopefully, in our lives at key and critical times when we look back. And that will be the way in which we understand God's ways, God's glory. If Moshe Rabbeinu was given that capacity, and maybe we're given a hint as where we should, where we might find God, sometimes it only happens when we look back. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.